Oh, hello there. Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me. Hag Sameach. Welcome to my humble little sukkah. Now that you're here, I thought we would have a look at a fascinating little booklet called Guidelines. And this is actually one of a series of books that are put out by the Orthodox Jewish world that concerns itself with questions and answers for various high holy days and observances throughout the length and breadth of the Hebrew calendar. And they are fascinating books, and they're really easy to read. And as you can see by the picture on the cover here, you can see this one's to do with the Feast of Sukkot. And it's entitled, its subheading is Over 400 of the Most Commonly Asked Questions About Sukkot. So I thought we would get into this work and have a little bit of a look at it, because it's absolutely amazing. It's written by Rabbi Elazar Barclay and Rabbi Yitzhak Jager. And it's the publication, Targum Feldum, I think, are the publishers of this particular series. And I thought we'd just get into it, start at chapter 1 and see how far we can get. Have a look. I'm sure you can pick it up online. And before we get into it, I just want to plug B&H Sukkot, which is an organization on the web. They have a website, and you can get a hold of your lulav and etrog, your willow and your myrtle, your 4 species for the festival. If you contact these guys, usually once you make contact with them and you register, every year they'll give you a reminder just before Yom Kippur, during the 10 days of tshuva. You'll get a reminder to put in an order for your 4 species, and you can pick them up from one of 3 locations: North Sydney, South Sydney, and I forget the 3rd location. I picked them up from the North Sydney location, which is at St Ives at Masada College, and they're very well priced. I don't think you can sort of get a better pricing than these guys, and you can buy different grades of the 4 species as well. And there is another organization, I don't know whether it's them or another organization, that sell Sukkot, sort of prefabricated Sukkot, which is the one that I'm in at the moment. And I think it's a really good investment that you actually buy a sukkah rather than building one with materials or pitching a tent, because there's something to be said about the actual materials that are manufactured with the intention of being added or being part of a sukkah is a completely different experience than getting under a sukkah where the materials were just bought from a local hardware store, and they were seconded as the building materials for the sukkah that you're going to be staying in for the week. You're looking at a sukkah about the size that I'm in at the moment, which I guess is a 2-man sukkah. It's sort of big enough for a single bed and a kind of a one sort of rectangular sort of table, fold-out table. It's certainly enough room for one person. Push comes to shove, you could probably get 4 people in here and have a meal. You can get definitely bigger ones, but this one's around $700, and I recommend you get it because you've got everything in one fell swoop, and it packs away nicely and neatly. You can put it in the garage, and every year you can just pull it out and put it together, and you don't have to worry every year about what you're going to do for a sukkah. It's certainly made my life a whole lot easier, and it's just made my sukkot each year to be much more meaningful to me, because it's made with the intention for what it is meant to be, with all the sort of component parts. Some of you might be thinking, those of you that are a little bit more savvy with some of the laws of Sukkot, this is sort of, the walls are made of fabric, and if the walls move due to winds more than a certain distance, it's not kosher. Well, they've got around that by fixing the lower 3 walls of the sukkah with this very taut cord that withstands any type of wind, and it goes up to a certain height, which is meets the minimum requirements of a sturdy wall. So I just thought I'd give you some of that information before we get into this amazing book, guidelines. Okay, so let's get into it. Chapter 1, building the Sukkah. Number 1, when should one begin building the Sukkah? According to most opinions, one should begin on Motzi Yom Kippur in order to go immediately from one mitzvah to another. If this is not possible, he should begin the following morning. If this will not leave him sufficient time to complete the Sukkah, he may begin to build before Yom Kippur, but he should not place the Sukkah, that is the bamboo, until after Yom Kippur. According to some opinions, one should begin to build a Sukkah before Yom Kippur as an added merit. So that's something I didn't formally know. That's quite interesting. You can actually begin the construction of the Sukkah before Yom Kippur even arrives. So there's this anticipation and excitement about moving from one mitzvah to another, because these are mitzvahs that can only be done once a year. So there's a lot of excitement and anticipation around mitzvahs that happen only once a year, rather than mitzvahs that can happen whenever you want them to. For example, you can give charity as much as you want, as many times as you want. There's a multitude of other mitzvot that you can just do constantly. And it doesn't mean that they're any less or any less valuable, but the mitzvot that are predicated on a sequence of timing, there's a great joy in those, to be able to meet those moments in time. It's similar to somebody, when somebody's birthday comes around and somebody buys them a gift for their birthday. If somebody were to give them a gift a week after their birthday, it wouldn't have the same impact as getting the gift timed to be given to them exactly on their birthday. Okay, so number 2, when should one finish the construction? Ideally, the Sukkah should be completed on the day after Yom Kippur. However, if by doing so the Sukkah will not be built properly and sturdily, he should devote more time to erect a better and more beautiful Sukkah. Okay, so don't rush it. Don't rush it. Number 3, may one build the Sukkah on a Erev Shabbat or a Erev Yom Tov? Yes, one must stop building at halakhic midday. So just before a Shabbat, if a Shabbat should fall somewhere between those 5 days from that transition from Yom Kippur to Sukkot, the first day of Sukkot, it is halakha to at least try and finish by lunchtime. Having said that, according to some opinions, one may continue to build until Minka Ketana, that is 2.5 halakhic hours before sunset. So push comes to shove, you can keep working right up into 2.5 hours before sundown. Number 4, may one build a Sukkah on Kol HaMoed? If a person did not build a Sukkah before Yom Tov, or if he built one but it fell down, he may build one on Kol HaMoed. If necessary, even skilled work, which is usually forbidden on Kol HaMoed, is permitted in order to fulfill the mitzvah, but if possible, this type of work should be avoided and the Sukkah should be a simple construction. Number 5, is anyone allowed to build a Sukkah? Is anybody allowed to build a Sukkah? Any person may build a Sukkah, including women and children. However, it is a mitzvah for every man to participate personally in the building, and whoever toils and sweats with this task receives atonement for serious sins. And so I can confidently say I worked up a sweat putting this Sukkah up. So that's really good to know, that somebody who toils over building the Sukkah to the point where he sweats assists with his atonement for very serious sins and transgressions. It's excellent news. Yeah. I have read that before, but it's good to just read it again and get that refreshed. It is preferable not to ask a Gentile to build a Sukkah. See question 220. So from that, I would surmise that in an emergency, a Gentile can build a Sukkah, but it is not advisable. Number 6, is everyone qualified to put up the Sukkah, that is the bamboo? Ideally, the Sukkah should be put on by a Jewish man. If the Sukkah was put on by a woman, child, or Gentile, the Sukkah is kosher. According to some opinions, such a Sukkah should be raised and lowered by a Jewish man. Now, that's the most difficult part of building the Sukkah, is pushing across and affixing the bamboo. I did have it fall down yesterday. Thankfully, nothing was hurt, damaged, or anything, and I got it up pretty easy and sort of fortified it. But yeah, that's that's kind of the most difficult part. I mean, getting children to do that would be, I don't know, pretty silly, I would say. And it's preferable to use the bamboo rather than use like leaves, because leaves, especially when they're still green, can tend to draw insects. And if you eat in your sukkah, these tiny little insects that buzz around all the greenery of the leaves over the top of the sukkah can fall into your salad or into your soup or into your meal, and they can cause you to commit a transgression. So that's why it's always good to use bamboo. And like I said, buy the bamboo from the Orthodox Jewish outlets. Don't go to your local Bunnings or hardware store to get your bamboo, because it wasn't manufactured and put up for sale with the intention that it be used for a sukkah. It's a huge merit to build a sukkah whose materials were actually compiled or manufactured for the intention to be a sukkah. I mean, don't get me wrong, if you can't do that, anything that you do is better than nothing. But it's great if you can buy actual materials for the sukkah that were actually intended upon their manufacture to be used for the sukkah. I just want to pause here and just remind everybody watching the video that it's very important to be abreast of the Orthodox Jewish understanding of a lot of the things that we find in the Torah. And the reason why I place so much emphasis on the Orthodox Jewish way of doing things is because this is the only demographic that have, to the best of their ability, through various trials and tribulations over the centuries, have maintained an observance of Torah to the best of their ability to what was originally laid down by the men of the Great Assembly. And those of you that don't know what it is when I talk about the men of the Great Assembly, this is all the sages that were essentially rescued by the Romans. They were rescued by the Romans during the siege of Jerusalem, which saw the sacking of the Jews and the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. But an agreement was set in place by Rabbi Rabban ben Zaki. I think it was Rabban ben Zaki, Rabbi Shimon ben Zaki, I think. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong about that. And they agreed to set up a Jewish house of learning at Yavne. And then not long after this, after its establishment, great men that were still alive, in some cases some of the last minor prophets, they actually sat on the council at Yavne, and they had a challenge. They had to now change the actual application of the Torah among the Jewish people that were still alive. And the landscape had changed considerably, because they no longer had a temple that would be the focal point of their religious life. And so they had to shift gears, and they had to enable every individual to be self-sufficient in a sense. And so, to give you an analogy, it's kind of like having a four-wheel drive and having an on and off-road setting on the four-wheel drive, and driving it for a long time on-road, and then all of a sudden you find that you've got to take it off-road where it's quite bumpy and rocky, and so you have to shift the setting to the four-wheel drive mode of the car. And so in many ways the Torah had to sort of shift into four-wheel drive mode, and so if you can glean from the Orthodox Jews and their publications and their teachings, that fortunately there's a lot available online that you can watch anonymously, you will get a good understanding and idea of being able to connect with the nation of Israel in a very profound way. So it's always important to look to the Orthodox Jewish world before you look anywhere else. If you look, and really don't look anywhere else, because you don't need to. Okay. Is everyone qualified to put up the Sukkah? Ideally, the Sukkah should be put up by a Jewish man. I think I just read that. So number 7, we're up to number 7. May one build a Sukkah anywhere? May one build a Sukkah anywhere? A Sukkah must be built under the sky, with nothing intervening between the Sukkah, that is the bamboo, and the sky. One must be careful not to build a Sukkah under a roof. See also question 53. An overhanging balcony, a tree. protruding sukkah of another sukkah. So if you have another sukkah that's a little bit higher next to you, and that kind of overlaps a little bit, the sukkah comes over like 1/2 a meter or something, that you really shouldn't sort of get it done like that. And so the idea is to keep a certain sense of uniformity with the construction and the way we go about things to keep us unified. It's not just sort of the Wild West where everybody does his own thing as to what his heart feels in the moment. Number 8, what if one part of the sukkah is under the sky and one part is not? If the section under the sky has sufficient walls and a minimum dimensions, the sukkah is kosher. Nonetheless, a man may not eat in the part of the sukkah that is under the sky. A man may only eat in the part of the sukkah that is under the sky, meaning that he only has this chak between him and the sky, no other overhanging object. Sometimes the invalid section may be included in calculating the size of the sukkah, and the Rav should be consulted. So in other words, you'll get rabbis that say, no, you can't have a part of the sukkah under something else, and you might get some that say you can, but as long as you don't, when you're in the sukkah, you don't eat under that part of the sukkah. Number 9, may the sukkah be built near a tree if the branches sway over the sukkah in the wind. Ideally, one should chop off these branches. If one did not do so, the sukkah is still kosher, even when the branches are swaying over the sukkah. So there's no transgression there, but it's advisable that if you can just remove the branches of the tree. I would probably not do that. I don't want to sort of start pruning a tree, but you can do it. Number 10, may one build a sukkah underneath washing lines? May one build a sukkah underneath washing lines? Yes, since the lines are very narrow and there is a space between them, they do not invalidate the sukkah. This is true even when laundry is hanging from the lines. However, if the laundry becomes entangled in the lines, the area of the sukkah becomes invalid. In some situations, this may invalidate the entire sukkah. So the solution to that is get the clothes hanging off the line off. Number 11, may one build a sukkah in a public area? In Eretz Israel, this is allowed since permission is automatically granted to use the street for this purpose. So that's why you will see in the movie Oshpisin that you do see sukkahs in the street in Jerusalem, but you'll find outside of Eretz Israel that's not the case because permission isn't automatically granted by the government. The Kutz La'aretz, one should ideally avoid doing this unless specific permission is obtained from the authorities. However, the custom is to be lenient in this matter if no other area is available, especially if the sukkah is built close to the house. Number 12, may one build a sukkah in a communal yard? May one build a sukkah in a communal yard? So some people who have maybe a courtyard that is shared, since each person has a share of the yard, he is allowed to build a sukkah there. However, he should not build it in a place that will cause obstruction or any other inconvenience to neighbors without prior permission. So it's common sense. So if you're sharing if there's 4 dwellings that share a courtyard, then take up only sort of one of 4 parts of that courtyard if you can, because technically, you've got sort of 3 other people that you have to consider that are going to want to use that courtyard to some degree. Or you can ask them for permission to make the sukkah a little bit larger if you like, but as long as it doesn't sort of get in the way of any of the other residents that have to use the courtyard. 13, may a person build a sukkah near garbage? It is permitted if no foul smell reaches the sukkah. And I did that one year. I built a sukkah and it was at a place where there was a dog, and the dog was tethered to a stake, like a little hook in the ground, and he had a chain or a cord, and he went to the toilet near the sukkah. So all that night I could smell a very bad smell. I still remember it to this very day, and it must have been right next to the wall of a sukkah. That wasn't a very good experience. So you have to be very careful where you put up your sukkah if it's going to be near a sewage, where there's sewage or something like that, because you're not permitted to pray near a foul smell. Unless you've got no other choice, you might be in prison or something like that. But if you do have a choice, it's best you're really not allowed to pray or do any avodat Hashem within sort of any sort of disgusting smell. Number 14, may one build a sukkah near sewage pipes? There you go. It is permitted if the pipes are closed and no foul smell is emitted. So there you go. 15, one Question 15, may one build a sukkah on soil? It is permitted, but it is forbidden to sweep the floor on Shabbat and Yom Tov. May one build a sukkah on soil? Oh, so there's just dirt, okay. So you're not allowed to sweep it on Shabbat or Yom Tov. It is therefore advisable to cover the floor with some suitable flooring. And most people who build a sukkah put down some sort of flooring. I don't with mine because our grass in the backyard here is fine. I just keep it trimmed and it's quite comfortable on bare feet. Number 16, may one build a sukkah on grass? This is not advisable since it is difficult to avoid spilling liquids on the grass on Shabbat and Yom Tov. The grass should be covered with suitable flooring. There you go. This is not advisable since it's difficult to avoid spilling liquids on grass on Shabbat and Yom Tov. The grass should be covered with suitable flooring. Okay, there you go. Number 17, may one build a sukkah in a place where he is afraid to sleep? See question 90. Question 90. Very curious about what this is going to say. So may one build a sukkah in a place where he's afraid to sleep? May one build a sukkah in a place where he is afraid to sleep? According to most opinions, a sukkah that is suitable only for eating but not for sleeping is possible. Since a sukkah is intended for a person's home, it must be suitable for both eating and sleeping. Therefore, every effort should be made to build the sukkah in a location that it is safe enough for sleeping. In extenuating circumstances, a rab should be consulted. See question 172, and we'll leave it there. And it goes without saying, a woman on her own is forbidden to sleep in a sukkah on her own, especially if it's in a public place or a shared courtyard or anything like that. Number 18, does the sukkah require a mezuzah? Since the sukkah is only a temporary dwelling, it does not require a mezuzah. So, see, this is what's so important about reading about the halakha of Sukkot is, you have all the best intentions and you go overboard, but if you don't sit down and actually try and learn and glean from the demographic of people on planet Earth who have been doing this for the past, 3,000 years or so, you're really doing yourself a disservice. And in many cases, you can be putting yourself under a lot of unnecessary pressure. Okay, so that takes us to chapter 2. Note, the figures given in this chapter are approximate. When the measurements of one sukkah are very close to these figures, a rab should be consulted. Okay, so it's important to mention too that no book should replace a rav or some sort of mentor or rabbi. These are just simply supplementary to your learning. But if you have no other ability to get a hold of somebody that you can speak to, that you can build a relationship with, of course, these are better than nothing. Having books, learning from books and watching videos, shiurim on YouTube or the internet or whatever, is obviously better than nothing. Number 19, what is the minimum size of a sukkah? The inside of the sukkah must measure at least 7 tefokim long by 7 tefokim wide. This is the smallest area in which a person could reasonably expect to sit. In practice, this means that the sukkah should preferably measure between 70 centimeters by 70 centimeters. It is still kosher if it measures 56 centimeters by 56 centimeters. And you see these pop-up tents that you can buy from various Judaica stores, and they're like the shower tents. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. Those upright shower tents that you can take and they pop up, and you can stand in there and you can wave the lulav. Maybe you have to do it with the door open or something. But it's advisable to just get as best a sukkah as you can afford. You want to beautify the mitzvah of this particular festival, so you want to spend up big. You don't want to be driving around a sort of a $90,000 or $120,000 Tesla and have a 56 centimeter by 56 centimeter pop-up sukkah. I mean, what is that telling the creator of the universe? If that's what you're doing, you're driving around in a Tesla and you have a pop-up sukkah that's 56 centimeters by 56 centimeters, in dimension. Like, if that's not provoking the Almighty to take action against you, I don't know what is. So get your priorities sorted and get yourself even a Hanukkah, a good menorah for Hanukkah. Buy as an expensive one as you can afford. Number 20, may the sukkah be long and narrow. Even if the sukkah is very long, it must still measure at least 7 tafakim wide. 21, question 21, may a low balcony wall be included in the width? Some narrow balconies lack the required width in the floor measurement, but meet the requirement when including the width of the wall. A sukkah built on such a balcony is kosher, provided that the wall is less than 80 centimeters high. The sukkah is at least 80 centimeters higher than the wall, preferably 1 meter. So that's a sukkah where you'll be kind of crouching down a little bit, and kind of difficult to wave the 4 species in that sukkah with that minimal height. Question 22, what is the required measurement of the different shaped sukkah, circular, triangular, etc.? The sukkah must be large enough to contain a square measuring 7 by 7 tafokim. So it's basically 70 centimeters by 70 centimeters. 23, what is the maximum size of the sukkah? There is no limit to the size of the sukkah, so you can have a huge sukkah if you want. What is the minimum height of the sukkah? Preferably the internal height should measure at least 1 meter, but it is still kosher if it measures only 80 centimeters. And now that's going to be a very low sort of lying sukkah. Maybe if it's for kids or something, I don't know. 25, question 25, what if pieces of the sukkah hang down into this space? This should be avoided since it may invalidate the sukkah. 26, what if decorations hang down into this space? The sukkah is still kosher. You can have as many decorations inside the sukkah as you want, as long as it still gives you room to move and doesn't impact on the actual design of the sukkah itself, or sort of encroach on the walls or the sukkah at all. What is the minimum height of the sukkah? The sukkah must not be higher than 20. What is the maximum height? I was going to say, we've already looked at that. What is the maximum height of the sukkah? The sukkah must not be higher than 20 amos from the floor of the sukkah, approximately 10 meters. This is rarely applicable. So it's a 20-meter ceiling. I mean, imagine putting up the sukkah if it's 20 meters off the ground. It'd be like a life risk putting that up that high. Question 28, how many walls should a sukkah have? Strictly speaking, a sukkah must be kosher, even if it has less than 3 complete walls. However, the custom is to build a sukkah with 4 complete walls to avoid complications. In order of preference, a sukkah should have 4 complete walls, 3 complete walls, 4 incomplete walls, and 3 incomplete walls. A sukkah that does not have complete walls should be checked by a Rav to ascertain if it is kosher. Question 29, from which materials should the walls be made? The walls may be made from any sturdy material. Okay, so like I said, if you can't go out and buy a prefabricated kosher sukkah, you can go and buy the materials from the hardware store. But there's nothing like standing inside a sukkah that is built with all the materials that are manufactured with the intention of being used for the sukkah itself. And I would still go out of my way to purchase the bamboo that's wound together from a kosher store rather than a hardware store. Of course, if you're going to use like leaves from a tree, you know, it vetoes you having to worry about that. But at the end of the day, you can build it out of, anything within reason. We'll get into that later if we get that far in the book. The book we're going through today is around 150 pages long, so obviously not going to finish the whole thing. We're not even going to probably get through half of it. But there are different laws regarding the materials that are used for the roof being organic and not manufactured. But we'll maybe get to that, maybe we won't. We'll see how we go. Question number 30, may sheets be used for the walls? The walls must be strong enough to remain in a position when the wind blows. Therefore, the sheets that flap may not be used. Ideally, one should not even use sheets that are firmly tied down on all sides, in case they become detached and this goes unnoticed. If 3 walls are made from sturdy materials, one may use sheets for the 4th wall. So in the case of the material walls, which you see in the video the sukkah that I'm in now, they have these 3 cords that are pulled extremely tight around the base area of the wall up to about sort of 60 centimeters, maybe a bit less, maybe a bit more from the ground. And these are sturdy, and that essentially enables the sukkah to be deemed as kosher. But if you don't have those taut cords around the base of the walls, at least three of the walls, then technically, I mean, unless your sukkah is placed in a place where it's not going to be, there's never going to be any wind there. But I don't know how you could guarantee that. May one use sheets in extenuating circumstances? If no alternatives are available, one may use sheets that are tied down on all sides. There you go. In this situation, it is preferable to tie several horizontal strings around the sukkah. There you go. These strings should be tied at intervals of less than 24 centimeters to a height of at least 80 centimeters, preferably a height of 1 meter. There you go. So it's 80 centimeters. This method invokes a halakhic principle that considers the strings to be united to form a solid wall. With such strings, the sukkah is kosher according to all opinions. 32. How high must the walls be? The walls must be at least 80 centimeters high, preferably 1 meter. There you go. But do not need to reach the sukkah. It is perfectly acceptable to support the sukkah on wooden posts, etc. if the walls are the minimum height. The remaining spaces may be left open or filled with sheets or any other material. In this situation, the sukkah should preferably reach the line directly above the wall. See question 45 about the sukkah reaching the walls in the horizontal direction. Question number 33. Must the walls touch the ground? The walls do not need to touch the ground, but they must not be raised more than 24 centimeters above it. So the walls technically don't have to touch the ground, but they can't be any higher than 25 centimeters above the ground. Chapter 3, the sukkah, which is the bamboo. Which materials may be used for the sukkah? So I've been saying that the sukkah is the bamboo. Not necessarily it can be vegetation, it can be any organic material. So just a little bit of a correction there. The sukkah doesn't always refer specifically to bamboo. It can refer to any organic material used for the roof. Sorry about that. Just thought I'd fix up my mistake there. So which materials can be used for the sukkah? The Torah requires one to use materials that satisfies these 3 conditions. It is vegetation, it is detached from the ground, it is incapable of becoming tameh. So it's incapable of becoming forbidden or unclean. However, there are other conditions added by the sages that disqualify certain types of sukkah. See questions 36, 38, and 39, which we're going to get to shortly. 35, is there a preferable material for the sukkah? According to one opinion, the best sukkah is cut branches of trees. This is intended by the numerical value of the word sukkah, which is 91, which is identical to that of the word tree, ilan, which is obviously 91. So there's some gematria there to validate that. So tree branches are the best things to use. Are all branches suitable? Most are kosher, but one should not use the following types: branches whose leaves tend to shrivel, since it is difficult to estimate how much sukkah is required; branches whose leaves tend to fall off into the sukkah; those that have an unpleasant smell; those that are liable to contain flies or bugs that may fall into the sukkah. There we go. Question 37. May one cut branches from trees in the street or countryside? This is a very important one because sometimes you'll see suitable roofing for the sukkah that is on private property. So you have to be very careful you don't do a mitzvah through committing a sin, a transgression. It is forbidden to fulfill a mitzvah through stealing. Therefore, permission must be obtained before cutting any such trees unless one is certain that they are ownerless. Okay. 38. May one use planks of wood for the sukkah? It is forbidden to use wide planks for the sukkah since the sukkah would then appear like a house. So the idea is that the ceiling has, you can see the sky through at various intervals, and if it were to rain heavily, it would rain inside the sukkah. You can't have a wall that, cuts off the ability for rain to come through or the light to come through, natural light to come through. Therefore, one may not use planks that are wider than 8 centimeters and preferably not wider than 5 centimeters. Therefore, one may not use planks that are wider than 8 centimeters and preferably not wider than 5 centimeters. Okay. Narrow planks may be used, although they are disqualified by some opinions. 39. May one use narrow planks sawn from wooden sawn? May one use narrow plank? Let me just start that again. Question 39. May one use narrow planks sawn from wooden objects such as crates, boxes, tables, closets, etc.? Many wooden objects are disqualified since they are capable of becoming tamei, and even after they are broken, they must still not be used. When they have been destroyed beyond recognition, e.g. after being sawn up into planks, there is still a difference of opinion whether they are suitable. However, all opinions permit the use of planks made from very large crates, approximately 20 cubic feet, since they were never capable of becoming tamei. Question number 40. May one use matting, wicker work, etc.? When pieces of sukkah are interwoven or connected to each other, they may be disqualified since they now may be capable of becoming tamei. Since these laws are complex, one should not use such matting or wicker work unless it has a reliable hechsher. Question number 41. How much sukkah must be used? One must use sufficient sukkah to cover the majority of the area of the roof. In other words, the total area of the open spaces must be less than the area covered. Question number 42. What if the sukkah is dense in some areas but sparse in others? The sukkah is kosher if the following two conditions are fulfilled. The total area covered by the sukkah is the majority of the sukkah. See previous question. The density covered area exceeds the sparsely covered area. Question number 43. May one sit under a sparsely covered area? Yes, unless the area measures 7 by 7 tefokim. It is advisable to spread the sukkah evenly so that every part of the sukkah is covered sufficiently. Number 44. May one cover the sukkah with very dense sukkah? There are several levels of kashrut. Ideally, there should be a sufficient spacing in the sukkah that one may be able to see some stars at night. If not, there should be a few spaces that will allow in a little sunlight during the day. Even if there is no spaces at all, the sukkah is still kosher. One may be lenient to do this in cold or windy places where a person may be tempted to leave the sukkah if there is sufficient sukkah. One may be lenient to do this in cold or windy places where a person may be tempted to leave the sukkah if there is insufficient sukkah, meaning that, it's going to rain and the rain's going to really get in because it's virtually like he's almost got no roof there. If the sukkah is so dense that even rain cannot penetrate, the sukkah is invalid according to some opinions since it resembles a house. So it's a fine line, isn't it? Sort of like you don't want to go too light with your sukkah and you don't want to go too dense. You want to keep it sort of 50-50. So that's interesting. Question 45. Must the sukkah extend horizontally up to the walls? No, but the sukkah must reach within 24 centimeters of the walls. Nevertheless, one must not sit next to the wall under the empty space unless it is less than 20 centimeters. And it's very rare, if ever, that you'll see a sukkah with a sukkah that doesn't come right to the edge of the wall. 46. What if the space between the sukkah and the wall is more than 24 centimeters? Then the wall next to the space is invalid and cannot be used as one of the 3 minimum walls. If the sukkah reaches the other 3 walls, then the sukkah is kosher. But if 2 walls are invalidated, then the entire sukkah is invalid. Okay. There you go. Question 47. Is there any way to correct such a situation? Yes, if there are large gaps, more than 24 centimeters between the sukkah and the walls, one should fill them in. Sheets, metal boards, or something else may be used. Although these items may not be used as a sukkah. Yeah, that's because it's got to be natural material. This method invokes a halakhic principle called doifen akuma, a bent wall. So the wall, the metal that you put over to cover the exposed space of the roof is technically part of the wall that's bent over. rather than part of the ceiling, because the ceiling has to be like a living material, or once was a living material. We imagine that the wall of the sukkah extends upward and then bends in horizontally until it reaches the kosher sukkah. One may not sit under this area of the sukkah, but only under the kosher sukkah. I remember, as I'm reading this, I remember when I first started to observe Sukkot, and I had no idea. Maybe like some of you right now have just started doing it in the last year. I had no idea. And so I'm reading this, and it's just like just about everything that sort of advises you not to do, I've done it. I've pretty much done it. But that's because, we didn't have I wasn't born into a Jewish home. And so you learn these things as you go, and you grow, and and I think the Heavenly Father, sees it as like a little child learning to walk. He walks 3 steps and then he falls over. But as far as he's concerned, the child walked. The parent of a 2-year-old who sees a 2-year-old take 3 steps is going to ring his spouse and say, listen, our boy walked today, even though he only walked 3 steps and then he fell over. As far as he was concerned, he walked. And so that's what we're doing. We're walking. You can make loads of mistakes, but at least you're giving it a go. At least you're trying. And it's not that you're doing it because you want to go against the rulings of the men of the Great Assembly. You just didn't come into the understanding and the knowledge of all that. But you're doing the best you can with the information that you've got, and nobody can, hold that against you, as long as you're really trying your hardest to find out, okay, how do I do this? What's the proper way to do this? Because there's a proper way or a best way to do everything, and there's a bad way to do everything. Okay, so talking about the bent wall again, I think question 48, is there any limitation to this method? This method is permitted provided that the non-kosher sukkah is less than 1.92 millimeters wide on at least 3 sides. Yeah, so you don't want the bent wall to come over so much so that the sukkah is only like, 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters of the roof, and you've got to stand under that 10 centimeters the whole time. It's a bit stupid. So you want the roof, the horizontal part, to be made up of the sukkah as much as possible, if not all of it. The area of the kosher sukkah is at least 7 by 7 tefukim. This situation is common when making a sukkah indoors under a removable section of the ceiling. So I think some houses in Israel have removable ceilings, and they can make the sukkah actually in the house, which is interesting. Question 49, may one place the sukkah on a metal frame? This should be avoided, just as the sukkah itself must not be capable of becoming tamei. Similarly, the supports of the sukkah should not be capable of becoming tamei. Therefore, the sukkah should preferably be placed on wooden beams. In extenuating circumstances, one may use anything as a support for the sukkah. Well, that's good, because my sukkah in this manufactured sukkah is resting on metal beams, which are overlapped with the canvas, but nonetheless, they're resting on metal beams. So that's interesting. In extenuating circumstances, one may use anything to support the sukkah. Similarly, if one visits a sukkah where the sukkah rests on a metal frame, one may eat there and recite the bracha for the sukkah. There you go. So should have read this before I did the video. I'm sort of sweating here. Question number 50. What if the wooden support beams rest on a metal frame? This is permitted since the metal frame is only a secondary support to the primary wooden supports. According to some opinions, this is true only if the wooden beams are actually assisting in the support of the sukkah, i.e. the removal of the wooden beams would cause the sukkah to fall down. If after removing the wooden beams, the sukkah would still rest on the metal frame, the metal frame is considered to be the primary support according to this opinion. Question number 51, may one tie or nail the sukkah to the wooden supports? One should avoid using the strings or nails to support the sukkah. If a person is afraid the sukkah may slide off or be blown away in a normal wind, he should not tie or nail it down, since this is considered a primary support. Rather, he should place heavy planks of wood or beams over the sukkah, since they qualify as kosher sukkah. So, yeah, if it's high wind, you think your sukkah is going to fly off. You can't nail it down or tie it down, really. But you can either put sort of heavy beams of wood or heavy sort of tree limbs or something over sort of key parts near the corners, in the hopes that the weight of those bits of wood will keep the sukkah sort of weighed down. I mean, if it's a place of if you're in a place of extremely high winds, I wouldn't even bother erecting the sukkah if you know it's going to blow away. But you have to, that'd be a tough one, because you have to make sure the sukkah is strong enough to withstand a high wind. So that'd be interesting, because you don't want it to make an unkosher sukkah, because it defeats the purpose of going out there and building the sukkah in a high wind environment anyway. So it's interesting. I don't know whether they'll address it here, but we'll see. I forgot what we're up to. 51, may one tie or nail the sukkah to, yeah, that's what we're up to. Alternatively, one may tie down the sukkah with vegetation such as palm leaves. Okay, so if you've got like something that's natural, a palm leaf or a piece of vegetation that's like you can tie it up like a rope, like it's stringy piece of, like it can be used like a rope, but it's it's something that's grown. You can use that. Certainly, you can use that to tie down the sukkah. If the sukkah will not be blown away except in unusually strong wind, it may be tied down even with string. Okay, so if it's an emergency, string, you can do it. In extenuating circumstances, the sukkah may be tied down with string, even if it may blow away in a normal wind. There you go. I remember going to a shul in Newtown and looking at the sukkah they put up, and I had a little bit of knowledge of what constituted a kosher sukkah, and I was in it and I'm looking around and it was kosher, and I went, oh wow, yep, they've got that right, they've got this right. So the limited things I knew back then, when I was sitting in it, I was looking around and I'm going, yep, oh yep, and it's a delight. It's a real joy to sort of to see, and to be a part of. So if you can get in contact with any Jewish community, as long as you don't proselytize at all, and just be able to hang out with them during some of these high events and high holy days, or go along to a Hanukkah fair in the park or something, it's just great, because they're all about Torah, and it just puts a smile on your face from the time you get there to the time you leave, because they're all about Torah. It's like going to Disneyland, and if it isn't for you, stop and think and examine why, because that's a real issue. Okay, we're gonna finish. We're gonna close out at chapter 3. But I'm just sharing this with you to whet your appetite to go out and get a copy of Guidelines. I don't think it's very expensive. They're quite cheap. They're only paperbacks. But there's a whole series. You can get one for Hanukkah, one for Shavuot, Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, everything. Yeah. 52, question 52, must the walls be built before the sukkah? Yes, the walls must be constructed before the sukkah is put in place. I guess they mean completing the walls, because you can't sort of suspend the sukkah in the air. If the sukkah is placed on a frame and then the wall's built, the sukkah is invalid and the sukkah should be raised and lowered. Similarly, if one needs to use the bent wall method, the bent wall must be constructed before the sukkah is placed, rather. Question 53, may one build the sukkah under a roof and then remove the roof? If the sukkah is placed on the sukkah before the roof is removed, then if the roof is part of the permanent building, the sukkah is kosher. If the roof is designed to open and close, the sukkah is not kosher. In this case, the roof must be opened before the sukkah is placed on the sukkah. If the sukkah was placed on the sukkah before the roof was opened, the roof should be opened and then each piece of the sukkah raised and lowered. Question 54, may the roof be closed after the sukkah has been correctly placed? Yes, but it is praiseworthy to reopen it just before Yom Tov commences. It is certainly permitted to close and reopen the roof after Yom Tov has begun. 55, who is qualified to place a sukkah on the sukkah? See question 6, which we just read. We read that. Everyone is qualified to put the sukkah, on the sukkah. Or is everyone qualified to put on the sukkah? Ideally, the sukkah should be put on by a Jewish man. We already read that. Question 56, lucky last. What should one think about when placing the sukkah? That's interesting. You ever thought about that? What should you be thinking about when you build your sukkah? You know, normally we're just thinking about building it and getting it right. But should there be anything else we're thinking about? Or some of us may be thinking about the fact that when they're moving soon. We're moving in about 2 weeks, which I'm not looking forward to. But there's a lot of things that steal your mind away that can potentially make you worry. And the thing I like about dwelling in the sukkah is I just can leave it all outside the sukkah. And so when I'm in the sukkah, I'm in a different world. And so when you're building a sukkah, you're building a window into a different world. You're completely enveloped by the divine presence. Hashem is hugging you constantly while you're in here. Every second that you spend inside the sukkah is a huge mitzvah, and it's huge. It's a huge merit for the soul, for the neshama. One should think that the sukkah. So what should one think about when he's putting on the roof, the sukkah? One should think that the sukkah is being placed in order to provide a shade, or to fulfill the mitzvah of sukkah. So it's a crucial part of the building of the sukkah itself, the sukkah. The next chapter, chapter 4, decorating the sukkah. It's just such a cool book. So get a hold of this book. This will give you so much information on actually how to build a sukkah and how to even dwell in it. Eating in the sukkah, the laws of eating in the sukkah. May one eat or drink outside the sukkah during a meal. So the best you can, try and eat all your meals and drink all your beverages in the sukkah. I don't often do exactly that. Like I'll go, sometimes I'll forget and I'll have a drink of water. It's not the end of the world, but the more you can actually do stuff that you would normally do in the house in the sukkah, the better. May one eat or drink outside the sukkah during a meal. If a person is eating a meal in a sukkah, everything he eats is considered to be part of the meal. Therefore, he is forbidden to have any food or drink outside the sukkah. He must be particularly careful to remember this when going to and from the house during the meal. Okay. It's a get to, not a got to. Remember that. You get to do it. You don't got to do it. You get to do it. One must eat mazonot foods in the sukkah. Must one eat mazonot foods in the sukkah? There are different opinions about this. So I guess this is just nibblies. But the prevalent custom is to be strict and equate mazonot foods with bread. Therefore, one should not eat outside the sukkah a piece of mazonot food larger than a kibitza, olive, I think it's an olive or half of an olive, size of an olive. Regarding the bracha for the sukkah, see question 114. In this context, rice is not regarded as a mazonot food. So there's eating in the sukkahs covered. I'll just go to the contents rather than flicking through. This is to whet your appetite, so you will go out and purchase this book. Sleeping in the sukkah, the first night of Sukkot, the bracha for the sukkah, rain. So what do you do if it rains? What do you do if it rains before or after? Before you build the sukkah, or during the building of the sukkah, what if it's raining? Special exemptions, honoring the sukkah, the last days of Sukkot, the 4 species, the esrog, the lulav, the hadas, and the arava. I think there's a few more chapters. Tying the species, taking the species, acquiring the species, hashanot, halakhic measurements. There's a glossary and index in Hebrew sources. Great book, little books. Like I said, it's about 160, 170 pages. Paperback. Go and pick it up. You won't regret it. Excuse me. Also, I've got the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch here, volume 4 has got all the festivals around this time. So if you want something a little bit more, a little bit heavier. Obviously, it's not the Shulchan Aruch; it's the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, so you can still go heavier than this. You can read all about the laws of Sukkot, laws of the Sukkah. The laws of dwelling in the sukkah, obligation of the sukkah, dignified use of the sukkah, the first night, the second night, the kiddush, the first 2 nights, eating or drinking, sleeping, rain, the blessing of leshev basukkah, women and children, the ill and their attendants, one who feels distressed, travelers, watchmen, winery, storekeepers. The sky's the limit here. You could be just learning all the time. Laws of lulav and other species. The lulav, the hadas, the arava. Harvesting the species, assembling the lulav bundle. The arava that became detached on Yom Tov. An inferior set. So if your 4 species isn't real crash hot. The laws of taking the 4 species and the order of the Hashana Hakafot. Eating before performing the mitzvah. Learning, returning the lulav to water. Returning the lulav to water, I have to read that. Smelling the hadas and the esrog. One of the things I love about waving the 4 species that I love every year is you can smell the etrog when you're actually picking it up and you're handling it, your hands pressing it together with the other 3 species of the bundle, and you're waving it and you're holding it there. It causes the smell of the citrusy smell of the etrog to you can smell it, and it's such a refreshing and a cleansing smell, and it's something that I really look forward to every year. It's really amazing. I just love it. I just love these the construction of the Hebrew calendar and the holy days and how Hashem is just so gentle with us and open with us and tells us what to do and when to do it. And it's up to us. It's really in our hands if we're going to do what he tells us to do or not. Free will is a funny thing because it's by the very existence of free will we receive great reward, but by the very existence of free will on the same token, it's why we get into so much trouble. And so it's a if you want to be a wind-up doll or robot, okay, but there'll be no reward, there'll be no punishment, there'll be no reward. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a fantastic Sukkot, what there is left of it for you. Until next video, bye for now.